I couldn't find it.
Yeah. So yeah, we found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Orange slice. Not big. Affected by.
So we were wondering if we can get
The soil
I mean,
is affected, the support.
you will continue with this.
yeah, I will.
Okay, so we can prepare for next time.
Hard work, eh? Is she doing overtime or extra work or something?
Yes, kind of because we're planning to go back
Oh, yeah.
Has been affected.
Yeah,
so she's still to get to
fine. Yeah, right. 2,500 each.
Okay, I pay one.
For a new business class, and she's in your
Okay.
No worries.
So any material that I have?
No, we're just working with that
The
and that. And I think, not prepositions, no. I'm going to go straight to the writing correction today. The preposition stuff, I'm not going to do today. We haven't got time. Do you remember that one from last week?
Yes, I reckon I have that material.
All right. If not, come and grab one.
Sure.
All right. Let's. Okay, if you're ready to have a guess, come up with your pen. If the pen doesn't work, there are some spares there. Come and edit whenever you're ready. We'll just do number 5 and 6 first. 5 and 6. Come up and correct when you're ready. Natalia, did you get the email? I sent you back your piece electronically.
You said like the last time I wrote it was you said that you would give it to me on
Yeah, I did, and I've instead of giving it to you hard copy, I decided I'd flick it back to your email, and I've just tracked changes so you've got it electronically. Yeah, good writing. There.
Yeah. Because we can say trouble to return this active we can return items, return some, return here.
Rainy.
7.
Rainy.
I have a solution. 7 Did you want that?
Alright, so we've had one group contribute, come up, and at least one edit from each group would be good. Yeah. If you're quick, you can come and do the easy one.
No, I don't. Yeah, after I had one. I had to take this one actually.
How many mistakes are in
Good.
this?
Number 5's got
Number
fairly
6.
good treatment, but there's one or two things, at least one. Yep. Come up and correct. Just remind you guys what's the cable. So, anyone like to have a go at number 6? Come and have a shot. Come and have a crack. Come and have a shot. Come and have a go. Have you heard the slang crack? Come and have a crack. Come and have a go. Try. Have a crack at it. Okay, Erica, come and do 2 from 2 others on number 6. And Kayako, can you gather some ideas from your group and come and do 2 for number 6? And anybody else who's got further ideas? Throw them up.
Number 6. The government must find a solution. As for the last 3.5 years. 3 years and a half. Also, and 3 is has to be right, not like till 10 is usually the right amount. 3 and
So what if it's less than 10, so we put it in the word.
till 10 is you have to write it out and you put your continuous numbers. Yeah. 3.5 years, yeah. All the, I don't know, it's so awkward.
All right.
All the environmental
So
problems.
let's do it.
Duty?
Yes.
The environmental. Or for the last 3.5 years of the environmental problems or the trouble to people. Okay, it's better. Sounds
Alright,
better.
10 kilos, really?
So I got this.
Oh, yeah, that's why. It's heavy.
It's heavy.
Okay. Big project. Okay. Okay, visual.
I didn't do it.
Pass that around, please. Put your name on
So
it.
he sometimes go far. So you told me that he sometimes go far away, like a 1 week.
Oh, ministry. Yeah, I think he's going to be
You think?
November.
How long? 1 or 2 weeks.
1 month.
1 month? Really?
Sometime 1 month. Very tricky to make.
Certainly.
Yes. At the moment I have the 3 shows at the 2 schools. Yes, here. So he's using English class and used to be in class.
But you've got a load here, so
And
you
so
don't have. Normally the government comes, but the government does.
And so she wants nothing there last stuff. I did.
So as soon as you have should, must, might, may,
So that's one day, this Sunday I have a day off. So
Oh, lucky.
doesn't have to be singular.
I don't
Right.
know.
Most of the states in my country, so it's a specific bunch, isn't it? Yeah, so you can do it that
Is that
way.
it?
That's correct. Most of the states, you're pointing to a particular group of states, so it's the. The other way though,
Most states.
that's right, you can take that out.
Oh.
Most states in my country, yeah. So
What about many states?
many, yeah, but that's a different meaning, isn't it? It could be many, but it's still not most.
Oh, okay.
So we're wanting to preserve the meaning. So we say most states. It's like, you don't say most of people. You say most people, don't you? Especially when you're talking about all of them, the whole set. That's the key. This is a common error. I hear it a lot and read it a lot. The most of, and when you say most of and when you say most. You just say most without the of when you're talking about the entire class or category of the thing. Most cars in Australia are older than 5 years. But if you say most of the cars in my town, most of the cars in my town, you're making it more particular. It's a subset, isn't it? You're not talking about all of them, you're talking about a little group. So as soon as you make it a subset, then you say most of the cars in my city, or whatever, you've reduced the size of it, have you? You're not talking about all of them. So the general principle is most and then the total category. Most of, when you're talking about what we call a subset, a group within a group, a subset. Is that clear enough? We don't need an of here. Yeah, in my, now look, just a little, this isn't even a grammar error. This is a cultural error and a psychological one. I'd claim it's an error. Native. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
this is your country.
Agreed.
If you're planning to live here, I don't care whether what your visa status is. Who cares? Well, I mean, it's important, but psychologically, who cares? Like, if you're a permanent resident or if you're a citizen or whatever, if you've decided to live here, this is your country, right? So, can start conceptualizing it that way, even linguistically, and constructing it linguistically to yourself. It's kind of an important step, I think. So, in your native country, heavy, that's right. Heavy's the collocation, we talked about that last time, and we talked about that, I think, no, that's correct, correction. No S is there, rainfall, because it's uncountable. And flooding, yeah, now uncountable. Generally speaking, that's a gerund, isn't it? Because you've got ing. You got your verb, flood, to flood. The river flooded the town. We make a noun, flooding. Generally, I reckon 96 or 7% of gerunds are uncountable. We generally don't put plurals on them. Sometimes we do. But if you're writing and you're not sure, leave it off. And you'll be 90-something% right most of the time. And you just have to learn the ones where there are specific examples of plurals, but there aren't many. Throughout, yes, connected. It's one word. Not throughout, it's throughout. It's always one word. No hyphen, just write it all as one word. That's a lot of kids in high school still write it as separate. So that's what I call a native speaker error. The rainy season, yeah, a few people were writing rain season or rainy. It's the rainy season and the dry season. If you're from a tropical area, rainy and dry. Not drying or dry, right? Rainy and dry. Those are the two opposites for the tropical in English. And remember our rule about get, just straight to the trash. Into the trash, yes. We have landslides. In autumn, yeah, not double M, but N, isn't it? It's that weird autumn. We don't, it's silent. I'll do that little sort of dotted crossing out for a silent letter. It's there. Why is it there? There's something in the history of the word, isn't there? And if we, do you remember, let's do it, because it's all about one technique for spelling. One, there are many strategies you can use to tackle spelling. One of them is word history. And I use word this page so much it just sits there, comes up by itself on Google. Etim Online, remember? We looked at this, I think, week 1. Let's put it in. Autumn. Find the history of the word, and it will probably tell us why. Probably. Blah, 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 blah. It's a lot to read. Right, old French, autumnally. It's got a P in it, my God. Autumnus. A root orc. Ah, it's really old. Root. No, it's not giving. Can't see an obvious answer there. I'm going to go to the adjective and see. So sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not. No, I mean it's from the Latin, and the Latin's got an end in it, but it doesn't tell us anything before that. I thought it might, but it doesn't. Okay, so it's not going to help us in this case, but often it does. We'll come across another example, no doubt. All right, so you just have to remember that. You and men. As the soil is affected by, yeah, not for. So watch that, like Latin American speakers, often you have pour, and you know, you're translating, it's not going to work. By, affected by something. The water, yeah, now the problem here is lots of, isn't it? You could say affected by the water, yeah, but you have lost a little bit of meaning there. You do want to preserve this idea of quantity, you know.
Put a heaps of water.
Heaps is slang as well, very spoken. Yeah. So it's a even plenty is spoken.
Excessive amount.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Plenty, lots of, heaps. I put them in that order. Heaps is very slangy. Then lots of, then plenty. It's kind of like a. We shouldn't think of this as a black or white thing. It's like a spectrum, you know, and it gets more and more, any language gets more and more informal or more and more formal. And we could place those, interestingly, in that order. Any thoughts?
Well, excessive amount of water.
Yeah, good.
Huge amount.
Excessive amounts of water. Huge, I'd also put in that list. Huge is not very formal. You know, we speak it a lot. Oh, yeah, look at that bus, it's huge. You know, say it all the time, but we don't write it. Okay, massive is also slang in that sense. When something's a physical, solid object, it's got to be solid. Like, think of Uluru, the big rock. That's massive. Or an elephant is massive. That's the formal use. But if we just say, oh, there was massive amounts of water on the road, it's slang. So tricky. Excessive amounts, even large amounts is fine. That's your simplest. Large amounts. Significant. Significant is often will get you out of trouble in lots of cases. It's such a flexible word. Yeah. So just those ones for your formal big amounts. Don't write big. Remember we talked about big. So a lot of this writing skill stuff is about discriminating between spoken and written, isn't it? And at this level you've got lots of vocabulary in the spoken area, but you can't always use it all. And look, I have said that I'll just sort of repeat. Don't use the advertiser especially as some guide to writing, because the advertising journalists try to write like people speak, to make it easy and relaxing, and you sit with a cup of coffee and read, and it's just like somebody telling you a story of a mate. And that was the great Rupert Murdoch formula that he invented in the early 70s, and he sold more and more papers, and he went and bought more and more, and now he's a media baron. And many other journalists have copied it, not all newspapers. So that's why I suggest The Guardian, or other ones, ABC News, they're a bit more formal. Even then, 2 or 3% of the time they're throwing in some spoken stuff as well, for the same reason, just to make it a little bit easier. But the Murdoch thing is right down the very slangy, informal end. So by all means read it, and look, it's a great exercise. We could do it sometime. Get an advertiser article and just go through and underline everything that you think is normally for a professional report too spoken. That's a really good exercise to try to get your sense of formality really sharp, and do it over and over and over again. You could show it to somebody, I guess, for an answer, but even if you don't show anyone, over time you'll figure it out. But it's just sharpening your understanding of that distinction. And if you're not in Australia, anywhere else, US, you'll soon find a newspaper like that. I'm sure you've got a sense of when it's more informal, use something like that. All right, this one, just no one picked it up, little one, just a spelling thing, isn't it? Govern, govern the verb, and then all you do is add meant to make your noun, government.
But we have on the paper.
Right, did you? Oh, that's right, I threw it in there. Fair enough. All right, should and must. Well, the person here wants to say must. There's a difference, isn't there, in meaning? So I wouldn't change it. We don't need to change it. This is a problem. Bring in a solution. Yeah, it's not the collocation. You're close with this. Come with a solution. Very close, but what do we need to do?
It comes up.
Come on.
Yeah, it's a phrasal verb. Come up with. Come up with is okay?
But I thought come up is a spoken.
Yeah, you've got to be a little bit careful with phrasal verbs. A lot of them are too spoken. This is sort of on the borderline. You could write it, but you could also create a strong sense of formality by using another word.
Do you have any suggestion?
Yeah, suggestions. Other suggestions?
Find a solution.
Find a solution. Yeah. Where would we find the answer to this? Say we don't know. Find, I don't like it. I've used find maybe in your paragraph before or something. I'm using it too much. That I don't like. It's not formal enough. Where are we going to go to find a word?
Just the word.
Just the word. Yeah. Remember that resource. Let's do it. Just to sort of
And what
repeat
about
the practice.
thesaurus? What about thesaurus? What can we?
A thesaurus.
Thesaurus, yeah.
The problem with a thesaurus, you could use a thesaurus and look up come up with or find, and then that's one option. True. The other is you take that word because you want to keep that word and you want to find some verb that goes with that, and that's, remember the collocation thing. So just the word. And we'll have a look at the verbs that go with the word solution. So this should be a writing tool that you fool around with quite a lot. Verb, yeah, where the object is, hang on, why was it mandatory there? I thought I wrote a solution. That's weird. Alright, verb, okay, so find solution. Yeah, that's the really big one, and you've got it already.
Yeah.
Offer a solution.
Okay, offer.
That's kind of interesting. Provide a solution. Yeah, that's sounding more formal. Can you, sorry, make it a bit bigger.
Oh, you well done, Elias.
Come with a solution. That would be come up with. They've just missed out the up. But if we looked at the examples. Propose, I mean, I'm just looking at the most common, but obtain a solution, impose a solution, you might implement a solution. You know, it depends what you mean. Devise, that's a very nice one, devise a solution. Devise, which means create, think of. Like a plan, you devise a plan. If you want to look at them, remember you can click on them and explore them a little bit more, and if you looked at those and you think, yeah, that's what I want to say, or it's not, or there may be some other grammar issue that you notice in there. So it's always worth, before you decide, have a look at, not all of them obviously, but a few of the examples. There are, sorry, I'll just finish with this. You know, it's clustered, it just automatically sort of tries to do this cluster of finding similar meanings. It doesn't always do it that well, so it's always worth looking at the other clusters and uncluster. Adopt a solution, deliver a solution, look for a solution, opt for, reject wouldn't work, search for a solution, seek a solution, you know. There are the possibilities, aren't there? But it just gives you a nice menu and a lot of colour and precision that you might not just naturally think of. So it's a pretty good tool for you.
Impose a solution.
Yes.
Doesn't have this connotation with forcing.
It does. Yeah, impose means like, you know, there's going to be resistance and the government's going to impose, and that might not be what you want to say. And if you looked in those examples, you'd soon see that that's what was going on. That's why it's often good to look into the at that example level, I think. Yeah. Okay, so any of those are possible. As I think we still need our 4. As for the last 3.5 years, yeah. Right, you've got to put, you say your amount and then you put your unit. It could be 3.5 weeks, 3.5 centuries, doesn't matter. Or even, you know, weights, isn't it? Not 4 kilos and a half, but 4.5. Say your amount, and then you say or write your unit. This is very, I hear this a lot. You know, people speaking it, and I see it in writing. It's a common problem. It could be, it doesn't matter what amount it is, 3.25 weeks, you know, 6 3/4 days, 6 3/4 kilos, whatever, you know, doesn't matter what unit or what amount. That's what you need to do. Don't split the amount like that. Is that okay? Clear enough? Or any questions about that one? Due to, yes, due to or because of. That's what I was looking for. Or the other way of saying it is that. Yeah, as for the last due to or because of environmental problems, people have had, correct. Because you're talking about up till now, aren't you? For the last, there's the last, so it's up to now, isn't it? It's up to there, so you're going to do a present perfect. And have had, correct. And don't use got, no, it's the reverse, get rid of got. And use have had trouble, yeah, good. we can't say have had trouble. If you say you've had trouble, you're always going to have an ing. Had trouble returning, had trouble working, had trouble breathing, had trouble climbing the stairs. It's always going to be a verb ing here after when you have trouble. To return, that's an infinitive, isn't it? It's a non-finite verb. There are two kinds of non-finite verb in English. You've got the infinitive, to return, and then you've got returning, the other ing. And the trick is, which non-finite do you use? Most of the time you use your infinitive. But there is a small bunch of phrases or particular verbs, like this one, have trouble, or a particular, like consider, the verb consider. So there's a verb here, verb 1, and it will mean that the second verb has to be verb plus ing. There's about 33, 35 verbs in English, that's how many, not many more, where you've got to write your ing form. Last term I think I gave people that list, didn't I? Print it off. It's in Michael Vince. It's in that book that I've sent you. You can look it up. I'll find it again to give it to you, because even very advanced writers still have trouble with some of those 35 verbs.
But in this case, you don't use to.
Sorry, Olga?
You don't need to use to before returning.
No.
Yeah.
No, you never have the two together.
Yeah.
It's always either to return or returning.
Yeah.
And in this case, nothing. It's return. They've had trouble returning to their farms.
Sometimes we do have to plus ing. Looking forward to singing.
Ah, yes, okay. That's because looking forward to, that's the collocation, and then you're looking forward to a gerund, seeing you, going to the party, watching the film, getting a present, yes. But it's not because they're connected. It's just a coincidence that you've got a collocation that's ending in to, like looking forward to. You're right. Looking forward to, seeing you. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Any issues on that, Koichi? Something?
Good. All good.
All good?
Yep.
Yeah. Any legal appeals, objections, Your Honour? Anything you want to take to the High Court? Thank you. The High Court of Grammar. We should have a grammar court, shouldn't we? We should have fines, don't you think?
No.
No, not for you guys.
Oh, okay.
For natives, right? You're excused. We make a lot of money. All right, shall we keep rolling with then 7, 8 and 9? Over back to you for 5 minutes to figure out what needs changing.
Many researchers, I think we can change studies. Research is already
All good, Gina? Gina?
Yes.
Good. Beautiful. All right. Unfortunately, this is not back yet. I presume this year will come back soon, and then you can have a little dialogue together. Pamela's not with us, so unfortunately, we can't have a discussion, but just let's wait up and we'll get into the corrections then.
Can be I think we don't need very and anomaly is unknown.
maybe the adjective here.
It has been
Noun here is
by
very
large number.
abnormal.
Okay. Okay.
So I don't know that's what.
No, I know we in adjective.
This right? Why it sounds like.
Maybe a moment.
That's the
It means
anyway, I'm looking.
it means abnormal.
I don't know how about to wear it. Abnormally completely around here. Mistakes an abnormal way. But not
Very
Make a significant difference instead of big.
Okay.
Anomaly is not connotated.
It's a really good word to use here, but you need to change it here. Yeah, you can use it with not like that. So there's something grammatical. Not the vocabulary is good. Keep the word. You're on the right track. It's a part of speech. You're right. It has to be, and it has to be the adjective.
This is the verb.
It's the noun. Anomaly is a noun. Yeah. I don't know if there's a verb. I don't think there is. You can't anomalise something. It's noun and why?
It doesn't feel like that.
Because of the why. Anomaly, E-L-Y. That, as a anomaly, is a noun. So you have to change it to an adjective.
Noun can be used as an adjective.
Sometimes. You can. That's right. Yes. Yes. True. No, because that's true, Keko. If there's no adjective before it, instead of being that's what it's
so much work is to go.
I want to change something for here.
So we're going to for here.
And then this double R.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
This way. It has to be this way.
Nowadays, because it's so much work.
Oh, sorry. One hour.
large amount of area to forest.
That's right. Because of this thing and this So is that okay? Just change the noun. Yeah, oh, there's a change in the weather. We can say climate change. That's a common. Very common phrase. So we don't need to change that. Now it's a noun. What's the mother? Think of the word develop as a verb. So you want to turn that into a noun. What would you say? Yeah, that's right. Development.
He's thinking number 7's not 5 or 6, not 4. No. Significant.
Significant is good, but you need to be
5 year run.
significant.
This?
Yeah, should be 5. Thank you. Yeah.
Non il vince here Yes. But see what you see.
All right, let's go. Come up and correct whatever you've got at this stage. Send someone from your group up. Go for it. Corrections, please. So Rose, come up and do a couple.
But you have
Koichi, and do a couple. Olga. Go for it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mercy, come up and do a couple. Talk to the group first.
So then the rest of what? No what? Just ambiguous.
Just general.
And have a good look at the corrections that go up on the board. because you might want to correct the correction. If you don't agree with it, you can change anything that somebody's written.
Personally, I read this one sentence, but I couldn't find any interview.
I spent time reading 2 hours or something.
So forest is a leaf, so we can use much forests. Number 8. Because forest is these are all these.
Okay, Mercy, good luck from your group to change.
No?
Ian, has your group got anything to correct? Number 9, maybe come up with. Okay, Mercy, go for it.
Okay, ready. Go for it.
Just watch that bag.
Take your You're ready. You have the best of the Go for it.
Iron Mountain.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I think done a pretty good job there. It has been confirmed by now. Okay, no one got it. Okay, research is uncountable. Yeah. So, yeah, so what do? We can't say many, can we? No. So, a great deal of, a significant amount of, or probably the nicest one, by extensive research, collocation.
I was reading like researchers, no research.
Yeah, right. And that's right. We hear researchers quite often if we're studying, don't we? Because that's ERS, the people who research.
Yeah, yes, I thought.
Yeah, that's going to have an R in it. But here it's meaning the other word. If you find these, handling uncountable and getting the qualifying bits correct is a bit tricky, you can always go for the countable word, study. Yeah, so it goes studies, and then we can say many studies. Many's not too informal, many's fine, it's just quite neutral. So we can convert by many studies, or a large number, and then, because we're now countable, aren't we? A large number of studies works just fine. We just can't do it with the uncountable noun. See the issue? Does that all make sense? That's a very common error. There are some users of mainly American English, some, but still a small minority who will say researchers. But and some British, I saw the other day somebody doing it. I thought, I was surprised because they're British. But yeah, it's really minority practice. It may grow, but at this stage, it's where it is, how I'm explaining. So go with the flow, go with everybody else, just regard it as uncountable. Now, anomaly is a great word. We just need to, anomaly means like abnormal. So you could write that, but it's that's a kind of a higher level word, less frequent. We just need to change that part of speech to OUS. An anomaly is a weird thing, an anomaly, an abnormal thing. That's right, it's a noun here. And a couple of people used it and I thought, oh, that's great, you know, impressive vocabulary. But you need to get the right part of speech. It's describing the weather, isn't it? Now dry, I wouldn't necessarily put dry because it could be just hotter and rainier or, you know, the person, let's try to preserve the meaning, just it's different from normal. So abnormal and anomalous, same thing. It's just another word to add to your basket, you know, synonym. That OUS. Just a bit of extension. Abnormal, yeah, adjective. What's the noun?
Abnormal.
Abnormality. Abnormality would fit anomaly, wouldn't it? These would be your nouns.
But abnormality, but
No. I'm just asking as a general little gymnastic exercise, you know, to do the different parts of speech. No, you certainly wouldn't. All right. So you can say this very anomalous. You know, it's not just a little bit weird. It's really weird. I mean, just saying it in the same way. So that's okay. Your very is fine. Whether has is okay here. If you're going to say, if we're going to have made, because it's whether, it's singular, isn't it? We'd have to say has made a, yeah, big, correct, no good, two spoken, a significant, has a significant influence on, correct. People's, yeah, and I think I have the apostrophe, that's correct, people's like that, isn't it? Health. In terms of your apostrophe, it's not after the yes, it's before. Because apostrophes are fairly simple, although a lot of natives get them wrong. The question is, who is the owner? And then write the apostrophe. And then do we say an S? People are the owner, put the apostrophe. Do we say people health? No, we say people's. Okay, so if you've heard the S out there in speech, add it. Alright, so the rule is health. Who's the owner? People. You write people, put the apostrophe, then ask yourself, do we say people health? No, we say people's health. So add your S. Right. In some cases we don't add an extra S. In some cases we don't.
Use apostrophes after the S, correct?
It is. But no, it's before the S, because people...
Looking in page, please.
That's right, it's wrong in the... I made a deliberate error in there because a few people had... Yeah, that's right, that's wrong. Are we okay with those? Yep. Let's move on. Be careful with apostrophes because a lot of sign writers don't get them right. They don't know the grammar of apostrophes, so you see them wrong. 10%, 20% of signs have apostrophe errors. It's pretty weird. Yeah, but there you go. I think the TAFE sign writing course should have a little grammar section. And you have to pass the grammar before you're a registered sign writer. Get rid of it. Get rid of the problem. Okay, this one, nowadays, yes, that's slang, very spoken. Spoken written. So currently. Yeah. Nowadays, so many people IELTS they say. Nowadays, you know, because you have to write about some trend, you know, our kids watching too much TV or whatever, you know. Nowadays, everybody's watching too much television. Nowadays, don't throw it away. It's spoken and you don't write it. Yeah, now this is an interesting one because of two things. Because of X and Y, climate change. And you don't need your the, get rid of that. So these two things, developing and climate change. Yeah, that one's fine. Not climate changing or anything, that's what we say, that's the collocation. This one brings up a broader question of, is that the right noun? Because you can make a noun out of verbs, can't you? Develop, and then developing. It's like jump, jumping. Jumping can hurt your spine. Don't do it too much. You know, jumping on a concrete floor can hurt your spine. We can't say jumpment or jumpation. Heard that one? No. there's only one way to do that verb, isn't there? Jumping. It's the gerund. That's the gerund, isn't it? Where we add ing. It's an easy way to get a noun.
But then we need a preposition.
No, it's not a preposition issue here. It's more the question of, we can often make quick and easy nouns by doing that. But you have to stop and think first, is there already a noun form in English that's not a gerund? Yeah? So develop, what's the noun that we all heard? Not developing, but development. Isn't it? That already exists. So don't pick a gerund form. That's my point. Now with jumping or smoking, again, there's no other noun form. Smoking. We can't make another one. So you use, the gerund is fine to use as a noun, where there are no other noun forms. Do you get that point? That
If we leave it like that, isn't it ambiguous? Development of what?
you have to say, because of development.
What sort of development?
I think it's reasonably clear because you're talking about the cutting down of forests. So it's like economic development. It's sort of assumed. We could almost say in there is a little ellipsed word, economic development. I think that's okay. Yeah. So we don't say economic developing. I bet you've never heard that. Economic development. Does that sound better on the ear? Yeah. Right. And the reason is exactly what I've said. That we don't create that. Don't create a noun here for a gerund. Yeah. And climate change, we are losing, that's okay, nowadays because of, it could be now, currently this is actually happening, we are losing, no double O. That's a common sort of year 10 native error. So lose and loose. Kids get them mixed up a lot. Loose is, my shoelace is loose, isn't it? Yeah. This is, where's my phone? Lose. Losing the forest. So that's a Z sound. And that's a S sound, and they're different meanings. But kids get them confused a lot. So here, common error, losing. So now, forests. I'd just do that. Because you can talk about forest as this stuff that we are losing. When we mean it in the ecological environmental sense, you can talk about forest or desert. Desert is expanding. You can say the deserts and the forests, you can do both. But here, because you've got smutch, I'd go that. You could say losing large areas of forest. Yeah. Not lots of. Let's not do lots of, and you can't say a lots of. You say a lot of. But even then it's too spoken, so I'll take it out. So that's okay. We have been losing. You could do that, but you don't need to. They're both okay. Are you okay with those? Last one. This phenomenon, correct. That's your singular. Phenomena is plural. It's a Greek word, and on and is the Greek way of making plurals. And when we have absorbed a lot of words from Latin and Greek, and sometimes those words come with the grammar of singular and plural. So we have to do the Greek way or the Latin way. Right? And the Latin way is becomes and the Greek way is on becomes Yeah. For example, this one. If you're a teacher. This is the Latin one. Curriculum, singular. So like the course outline, the course structure. Many of them, curricula. That's the correct. You see some people writing curriculums, but it's not right. Curricula. So that's the Latin way of making a plural, and this is the Greek way. You can see that is the same for both. Just slightly different pattern. Phenomenon, phenomena. Again, natives will get that a bit confused sometimes. So this phenomenon has, that's right, existed Since centuries ago. Since centuries ago, right? That's 3 words. You can say it clearer in 2.
Centuries ago.
No, centuries ago. You're talking about now. This problem exists, and it's existed for a really long time. And I'm using the preposition there. For. Yeah. For centuries. That's a better way of doing it, isn't it? Not since 6 weeks ago. For the last 6 weeks.
How about since previous century?
That's fine. Since the previous century. And because since works with our time. Oh, well, if we have a timeline, squeeze it in here, then there's the previous century, isn't it? And it's from that, or a particular date. Since the 1st of March, I've had a job. Or since the previous century. That's fine. But in this case, we haven't set a specific time. We've just said centuries. So it's hard to find a point from which to say since then. It's better to say 4 centuries. When we have an indefinite starting point, you can't use since. Yeah, since is about time from a definite point to now. Yeah.
So then why since 3 weeks ago is wrong? Because it's a definite time.
Since 3 weeks ago, it's just sort of a double. You're saying 3 weeks ago. Since 3 weeks ago, it is, but we just don't. You say for the last 3 weeks.
Or the problem arose since 3 months ago.
Don't use since. The problem arose 3 months ago. Don't use since. Yeah, the problem arose 3 months ago, and I've been struggling with it ever since. You can say it like that, but you wouldn't put it in the same package.
Since it's beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Since the beginning.
That's true. Since, and then you specify a point, don't you?
And John, I remember like long time ago, I was told like as soon as we use ago, so they should be past simple. So not
Right.
so
Yeah, that would be right because that's true, and it's sort of related to
it's
this,
just
isn't
like
it?
the indication of the tense.
That's right. It's that far. The reason being, that's 3 weeks ago in that period, isn't it? X amount of time ago, and there's a separation between now and then. And because it's separate psychologically, that's when we use our simple past. That's exactly right. Yeah. Temperatures, no, keep temperatures because in climate science, we've got lots of temperatures all over the place. Plural, keep that. Have is therefore correct. Have risen. The key is this, a lot. If you're going to write it, and I said don't, but if you do, separate it. Again, year 10 kids write that as one word all the time. Separate it, but I've also suggested to you don't use it, and that's a nice alternative. Have risen enormously, significantly. Both of those work very well. So fossil fuels must be cut drastically. Just A-double-L-Y is correct. Some are L-Y, some are A-double-L-Y. You're just going to have to remember those as they come up. It's a bit of irregularity. Just your adverbs, A-double-L-Y, or just simply L-Y. You'll have to learn those. I think after a C, most of the time anyway, they're A-double-L-Y after a C. There was something else in there. It was a bit the but. This phenomenon exists. No, we don't need an and. Sorry.
Yes.
Is it a comma before?
That's a bit tricky because it depends what they're referring to as the phenomena. Depends whether you say and or but. So there's no real correction possible there. It depends what they were writing earlier on. So that's not really a problem. Any problems, further issues, questions about any of that? Well, that sort of mops up lots of the, the more common areas for the writing, from a couple of weeks ago. So I hope there's some things there that you picked up. Maybe there were mistakes you made, but there'll probably be other things we talked about that mistakes you could possibly make. So hopefully that's helped clean a few things up and clarify stuff. What I'd like to do is move towards a bit of writing. What I'll do is I'll explain this thing. Give this out. And explain it, and then we'll have a break.
For the feel, it's uncomfortable. Feel.
This one, yeah. Look, normally it is,
Yeah.
but when we talk in this context, this subject, fossil fuels, because there's petrol, coal, gas.
Okay.
They're different types.
Okay.
That's not a problem. If you did diploma with me, you'll already have one of these.
Yeah, I mean, is it the same?
But it's the same. But the one you've got is probably buried in that file that says Diploma of English and Proficiency TAFE,
In the archive.
2017, 2013, 1927, depending on when you did it with me. So probably under all the other bills and files in your cupboard. So let's just give you a new one. Okay, now this is from a larger thick book, the Longman Exam Dictionary, and the rest of the dictionary is not that useful, but this bit in the middle is good. And people who've done diploma with me know about it already and hopefully use it. So just bear with me, please, while I explain it. Bear with me, please. I'll just squeeze it in here. I'll rub it off in a minute. Do you know that expression? Who's heard that before? Really useful for Natalia in reception, isn't it? Things like that, receptionists and or service people. When a member of the public comes and there's some problem or some delay and the person has to wait for a little while or even a long while, and it could be over the telephone or face to face, and you say, bear with me, please, bear. Think of the metaphor, we've been talking about metaphor. Bear, carry. Help me carry this problem with me. And what you're saying is, you're saying by this phrase, I know there's a problem, but please be patient. And it's nicer politically and diplomatic than saying, please be patient. Right? You don't want to say that. It's like, just bear with me, please, until I find whether Dr. Rogers is on the premises, or whether they've gone out to lunch. Or bear with me, please, the internet connection's not good, or whatever. Yeah. So if you've heard this before, just bear with me, please, while we go through it. This is arranged in terms of function. So if you see advantages there, and there are words for expressing advantage, I'll just go through the categories, and then I'll look at the ones that I think we can use today. Now, Gina on Skype. This is also, as I said, I've sent this to the group electronically, but this is a more legible copy. Legible, we don't say readable. And we certainly don't write it. Legible. Legible means to read, or to be able to read. More legible copy. So you've got words on advantages, and you can see there it's split into two, writing about advantages, writing about disadvantages. The next bunch is agreeing. And these are written mainly for writing. That's the point of this little thing, not so much for speaking. You can use these for speaking as well. It will often tell you whether it's formal or informal. Over the page, it's arranged alphabetically, the functions. So start with advantage, then agreeing, then can you see aim or purpose, words about. So you might write that at the beginning of your essay. The purpose of this essay, the aim of this essay is blah blah. The next bunch, approximate or exact. So when you're dealing with statistics or figures, exactly, to be exact, precisely, etc. Over the page, comparing and contrasting. Now that's one I think we'll use today, because we're going to look at the weather maps, climate maps I should say, climate long-term weather, isn't it? And look at the climate maps and talk in your groups about what's changed compared to previously and now. So you're going to be comparing. So some of these words you might dig into. Let's just have a bit of a look here. We'll just stop at this point because these ones we might use today. Comparing and contrasting. The first section, what you say when comparing things or people. You've got compared to or compared with. Can you see it? It tells you which preposition. You've got two possible prepositions, they're both okay. Used when comparing things or people, especially when comparing numbers or amounts. And then you've got some sentences. Examples. This year's profits are much higher compared to last year's. So you can see, if you look at the example, you can pull a few little grammar observations out. Compared to last year's, we can use a possessive after compared to. That's interesting. Little mental note. Then a slash, a vertical slash, another example. The average male now has a life expectancy of 77.6 years compared with 75 in 1960. Total spending on healthcare represents about 4% of GDP. Compared to most other advanced countries, that figure is low. Right, so we can start a sentence with it. See, they don't tell you this, but you've got to look at it and pull out the lessons. Mortality rates, death rates, are lower for women as compared with. See the as compared with. So notice that. It doesn't say it in the title, it just said compared with, doesn't it? But we can see as compared with. There's an as there. So that's kind of interesting. So you do have to drill down into the sentences and have a really good look at them and pull out the lessons there. Now, then there's by comparison, in comparison. When compared with another thing, person. Now notice that's more when you're comparing two single things. Single things. The first one is more about numbers or amounts, so more about plural, right? So the second one is singular, the first one's more dealing with plurals. Some example sense, won't go through them. Next to or beside, preposition used when comparing things or people, especially when there's a surprising difference between them. Right? So there's a key thing. When there's a surprising difference. Now, depending on what you discover as a group when you look at the weather map, the climate maps, maybe you want to make that point. Oh, look at that surprising difference. Then this might be useful. Otherwise, don't use it. So the point, one of the nice things about these lists is it tells you when and when not to use some of these structures, when they're appropriate or not. If you look at a synonym dictionary, you'll just get lists of these words with not that kind of guidance. Right? The point is there's very careful guidance here of how to use it. So we just look at that one. Our problems seem trivial next to those faced by people in the developing world. So when there's a real extreme, their achievements pale beside his. They seem much less important. Think of the metaphor, pale. It loses its colour. Right? So they say surprising. I think it's more extreme, right? Strong contrast. When there's a really big difference that you want to emphasise, then use this structure. As against. Notice the as against, as opposed to. Conjunction, So it tells you also the grammatical structure, grammatical nature. The one above it was a preposition. Here's a conjunction. So it's going to operate differently. Used when you are comparing two figures or pieces of information in order to show how they are different. The company achieved sales of 404 million as against 310 million in the previous year. One study predicted that 42% of female university graduates would remain single the rest of their lives, as opposed to just 5% of male graduates, really. What does that say? That says some very interesting things. Does that say men don't like intelligent women? Oh, I didn't say that today. Yeah, as opposed to... right, who in their writing or in their speech has ever used this structure? As against or as opposed to? Hands up if you've ever used it once in your life before. Right, we've got one hand up, one finger up. Now, that's the point of this little list, or, you know, we've got unlike, in contrast, by contrast, in proportion to, in relation to, relative, right? So there's 2, 4, 6, 8, and not all of them might be appropriate for what you want to say. But I bet, look at number 1, compared with, who's used that before? Everybody puts their hand up, right? So the top of the list is the more common ones, and as you come down the list, it tends to get less frequent, and therefore has a feeling of, you know, a more advanced user of English is going to be able to use all of these. So I think partly it's a self-assessment of yourself as a writer. Don't go back to compared to and compare with. You've got that under control. You know, you're here to stretch yourself into new territory, aren't you? So pick something like as against, as opposed to. Try it out in your writing tonight. And not just tonight, at all times, where you've got the chance, you know, not at work where you've got to get something ready in 10 minutes, of course, but where you've got time to try it out and perhaps check with somebody else. Your job is to be adventurous with this stuff and push into the new territory, push down the list, right? And what you decide will be different possibly from somebody else in your group, what they decide to use, because you're at different points. Okay, so the point of this whole thing is to get, you know, you would read that on a page and you'd understand it. The point is, do you use it in writing or speech? This is to get these words and phrases active in your writing and then in your speech. Yeah. So the only way you do it is by trying them out, and especially this is a great environment. You write it, I'll give you feedback within a week as to whether you've used it correctly or not. So really extend yourself. Okay, so it's a matter of, I'm not going to go through all of those because you know, we'll spend too long. But you see the point. Can I just go to the next section within comparing and contrasting? To compare things or people. Here we've got verbs. We've got verbs, haven't we? Compare, make a comparison, draw a comparison. Collocations. Draw an analogy, draw a parallel. Interesting, the draw comes up quite a lot here. Liken someone to. That's probably unusual for you. Yeah. Liken something to. You say something's like something else. Contrast. Make a distinction between. Draw a distinction between. Yep. So some verbs for that purpose. So depending on what you need to do, you select from number 1 or number 2 or both. Alright, now I'm going to go quickly through. You can see how it works. I'll go through the categories just so you're aware of what they are. Concluding on the next page. Decreasing. That's one we might use today. Decreasing. We're going to talk about temperatures. Have they increased or have they decreased? So you've got sections there, a whole bunch of verbs. Decrease, go down. Decline, fall, drop, plunge, plummet, halve, diminish. Over the page. Another section, causes. That's a good one. I'd like to do some writing on cause and effect sometime. That's very important. But not today. You could possibly use it, but we'll focus on comparison. Certainty and uncertainty. That's fairly important, a lot of that stuff, like expressing, are you really certain, or are you going to what we call hedge and express a little bit of uncertainty? I think we've got out of order here. I think it's photocopied wrongly. Because, yeah, see decrease? Hang on. Decreasing, it should be, shouldn't it? It should be, see, dwindle, reduce, lower, bring down. See the next page? They're all decreasing. Why does it jump like that? It's done the wrong thing. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Because it's page WH 65 and 66.
are on the next page.
Yes, no, the page is 66.
Yeah. So 64 and 65 are missing, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is that right? Where are they? They're where?
In the comparing contrast
Ah, yeah, right. So that's been flipped around. Right. So that page. So yeah, the second page. You need to. Sorry about that. Unstaple it and flip it over, don't you? Is that right?
Yeah.
And then it would be correct. Sorry about that. Yeah, I thought that decrease thing was a bit short. All right. So either now or at home, do that. You'll need to restate it. So. Yeah, so we've got more stuff on decrease there. Then we've got disagreeing. I'm just going to keep going. We've got effect, opposite of cause. Emphasising, explaining. Over page, giving examples, giving exceptions, giving opinions. Next section, giving reasons. So when you're explaining things and yeah. Increasing, right, this section, increasing, we're going to use this tonight. So it's up the top, WH73. So we've got increase, rise, go up, grow. See, it tells you with grow, for example, verb, VI, what's that, VI? Can you see grow, bottom of page 73, on the right? Intransitive, isn't it? It doesn't have an object, so little grammatical clues there, and same with rise and go up, verb intransitive. Over the page, double, triple, quadruple. Yeah, it might be new to you, quadruple. Go up by 4 times. Quad is 4, isn't it? Expand, soar, also intransitive. Escalate, soar, really increase a lot. Boost, very significant increase too. Extend, step up, add to. Oh, sorry, we're going down the left column. To make something increase. Increase, raise, put up, double, triple, quadruple, expand, then up the top. Boost, extend, step up, add to. So, notice there are 2 kinds. There's one, it just increases by itself, and then there's one, you make something increase. Probably when you're talking about temperature, it's going to be which one? By itself, isn't it? The first or the first one. Yeah. Then look at number 3. You've got nominalisation here. Remember? Creating a noun. So we've got a bunch of nouns to use. Increase, growth, rise, build up, surge, explosion, boom. Yeah. But they're nouns, so they're nominalised. Good to practice the noun forms. Okay, linking parts of a sentence. Lots of different kinds of logical linking structures there. Over the page. More linking, all of that page. Lots of different kinds. It says, you know, words meaning but or although or if or in order to or therefore. It's a pretty handy section, that one. Over the page, problems and solutions. Listing and ordering, making generalisations. Quoting people, if you're writing research papers or essays, you often have to quote your source. It's page 82. Referring, that referring there is referring to yourself and what you've written either previously or what you're going to write later in your writing. So it's what we call internal reference. And over the page, related and unrelated, showing and proving, study and research when you're doing academic sort of stuff. And the last page, subjects and topics. So there's a hell of a lot there. I think the best way to use this is figure out, what your writing task is and think, what am I doing mainly in this writing task? Am I proving something? Am I explaining? Am I comparing? And maybe think, here are the 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 functions. Have a good read of these sections, play with them, look at the sentence examples, get all that hot in your mind, then write with this kind of open next to you, and select. That's probably the best way to do it. So that's how it's used, that's what it is, and how to use it. And what I'll introduce in the next couple of weeks is another thing again that's much bigger, that deals with lots of different sort of categories. This is a good start. So what we're going to do is we'll have a break, and then in 10 minutes we'll look at a bit of speaking practice. We'll look at the maps in groups, and now you know what you're going to do. What you're going to do is you're going to write about these maps, and you're going to compare. What happened before, what happened now, what does it show? There's been an increase or a decrease or a change. And sometimes it's different, isn't it? Like, some places have decreased and some places have increased. Rainfall or temperature. We'll go through this. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3, and we've got 4. Alright? So we'll have a good chat about each one, like 5 or 10 minutes about each one. You collect the structures from listening to other people and yourself. Just get a whole lot of notes. And then in our last half hour, we'll use this to write and say what's gone up, what's gone down in comparison to what. So we're comparing, talking about increase, talking about decrease. We try and pull that stuff together. Alright? That's our mission. Let's have a break, 10 minutes, and then we'll get into it.